G'day gamers, Ranger Tony here again with another Pathfinder Kingmaker video. This time I'm going to look at the Magus archetype of the Eldritch Scion. I've done a previous Magus build video, which you can see up here. That video is... most of the details from there will be useful for this as well. I'm basically going to talk about the differences between the Magus and the Eldritch Scion. So the Eldritch Scion is the sorceress version of the Magus. They don't need to memorize their spells when they rest. Instead, they have a smaller pool of spells that they can cast at any time in any combination, based on the number of spells that they can cast per day. So let's dive straight in. Not going to worry about portraits. Races. Not going to go into too much details here because this is very similar to the Magus races. Humans are still my preferred choice here with their +2 to one attribute and the extra skill and the extra feats. Elves are no longer that useful because they don't get a bonus to charisma. They only get dex and int. Dwarves are even worse than they would have been previously because they have a penalty to charisma. Gnomes and halflings, even though in the previous video I said they're not that great, they do have bonuses to charisma, which make them better choices. In fact, the halfling with bonuses to charisma and dexterity would make a fairly decent Eldritch Scion if you're willing to accept the fact that they're going to do less damage with their weapons. Half elf and half orc are basically the same. They're similar to humans in that they get +2 to 1 ability score, and then the rest that they get are bonuses to some skills or focus on skills. And like the Magus, the Eldritch Scion is not really a skill focused class, so there's no major advantage there. Out of all of the Aasimar, there are a bunch of Aasimar heritages. I'm going to go through this as an Aasimar just so that we can see this. Pick Magus, pick Eldritch Scion. So the Aasimar heritages give you bonuses to a +2 to 2 different stats normally. Out of those, Aasimar, Angelkin, Emberkin, Idlekin, and Muse Touched all have bonuses to charisma, with Angelkin also having a strength bonus and Muse Touch also having a dex bonus. So depending on whether you want to do a strength-based or dex-based Eldritch Scion and you wanted to do Aasimar, consider using Angelkin or Muse Touched for those. Okay, I'm just going to pick Muse Touched for now. The big thing for Eldritch Scion are the sorceress bloodlines. So I'm going to go through that in a fair bit of detail now. A lot of these are very similar. In particular, there's a whole class of Draconic and another class of Elemental. But basically all of these give you some sort of bonus feats, bonus spells, and things like that are interesting to play with. So the Abyssal bloodline is demonic heritage. Somewhere in the previous history of your family, a demon was involved. That's all I'm going to say on that. The powers that you get from demonic heritage are around summoning and might. So you can get some of the feats that a fighter gets, like cleave, and you get great fortitude, power attack, sundering armor, bull rush, and then some of the extra abilities that you get here are to do with fear and summoning and strength-based things as well. You also have the ability to, as a free action, you can grow claws at any point, and that's a fairly common feature in a lot of these. considering that a large portion of them are Draconic, and you get that feature in there as well. I'm not sure I like the Abyssal all that much. It doesn't resonate well for me. You don't have to play as evil or anything like that when you choose some of these ones that obviously feel like they're in that sort of realm. So yeah, Arcane Bloodline is an interesting one. So you have had powerful wizards and sorcerers in your family history. A lot of these feats are to do with spell abilities, magical abilities. So you can get combat casting and Iron Will and Reach Spell and Knowledge Arcana and Spell Focus and Spell Penetration and those sorts of things. And then some of these other abilities that you get grant you extra spells like Magic Missile, and then you have an arcane bond to either an object or a familiar. So a lot of this sort of stuff is just sort of meta, not actual meta magic features, but things that give you spells and features that you might not already have. So you can dispel magic, and you can true seeing and dimension door and just sort of higher level magical abilities, and you can get those as special abilities throughout your progression. So that actually I think is a fairly interesting one. I'm not sure I like having a familiar, but it certainly has a lot of other things to go for it. Another one that seemed interesting to me was the Celestial Bloodline, and so this one is at some point in your past there was an angel or some sort of divinity in your heritage, or they had some sort of intervention in your heritage. This tends to give you feats around agility and protection. So you've got dodge, agile maneuvers, weapon finesse, those sorts of things that you can pick up as feats, and then a lot of the things that you get here are around protection, but you also get a few things like this heavenly fire, and this one here is flame strike. So you get some powerful divine sort of attacks and protections. So it almost makes you part cleric in a way. You don't get any healing abilities that I saw when I looked through all of this, but yeah, it's very much down that that angelic sort of protection. So then the vast majority of these now are Draconic bloodlines, as we can see. These are all pretty much the same. What they give you are bonuses to damage and protection from a certain element type. And if you know your dragons, you'll be able to pick a lot of those straight up. And you get a few extra spells and abilities thrown in, and then you get the ability to slowly turn into a dragon or half-dragon type creature. So you immediately get the ability to, like the Abyssal heritage, you immediately get the ability to grow claws. And then you've got all of these other abilities where you're slowly turning into a dragon, getting strength bonuses, armor class bonuses, all of those sorts of things. And you'll generally have, so black dragons will be acid, so they get resistance against acid, and they get, where is it? You'll get bonuses to doing damage with acid weapons, acid spells as well. Is it this one? Yes, you get 1 extra point of damage per dice rolled when you do acid damage. So those are really nice combinations. So your black dragon is acid, your blue dragon is electrical, your brass dragon, I think, is also acid. Your bronze dragon is electrical. Your copper dragon, I think, is fire. Gold is fire. Green is acid. Red is fire. Silver might be cold. White is definitely cold. And so they're all pretty much of the same, but there's a couple of little differences in there, here and there. So, for example, the bronze dragon, rather than no, actually, that is pretty much the same. Got mage armor. Yeah, it's really just the types of damage that you get protected from or you get bonuses for. And there's no, like the other ones, there's no alignment restrictions. So you can have a black dragon, which is evil, in your heritage, and you don't have to be evil. Likewise, you can have brass or bronze or copper or gold, any of the metallic dragons, as they call them, who are all essentially good dragons. You don't have to be good when you play someone with that heritage either. Then there is the elemental heritages, and there's 4 of those, and again, these are very similar. So you will get an elemental ray. So you'll get an elemental ray. Sorry, I clicked the wrong one there. This one here. Scorching ray, but a variant of that does electricity rather than fire. Although if you pick the fire bloodline, you'll get the fire version of that. And you get elemental blast. You get also burning hands. So you've got these 3 different variations of spell that you can cast, and they're slight variations on the original, and the rest of it is pretty much the same. You slowly turn into a half elemental as well, and you get protection from those elements. So air, you're protected from electricity, and you can do extra damage with electricity, and you get some electrical spell abilities. Earth is acid, fire is fire, and water is ice. I actually think those elemental ones work quite well. At least the stuff that I've tried out already. In particular, getting the elemental ray fairly early on, as well as, so you get elemental ray at level 1, so you can cast this elemental ray at first level, and the damage goes up over time. Yeah, it gives you some interesting options. Having said that, most of these spells that you get are not touch spells. So as an Eldritch Scion, you're going to want touch-based things that you can use to power your attacks, and you don't get any of those. In fact, there's really nothing that I've seen in any of these heritages that is an advantage from that point of view, using with spell strike. Even the claws that you get really are not much use to you if you go down any of those bloodlines that use those, because you're never going to use them anyway. You've always got a weapon that you're going to use, which is better. The Fey bloodline, Fey, if you don't know, covers a lot of the, I mean, even elves are sometimes considered a little bit Fey. In Pathfinder, gnomes were actually part of the Fey and left it, so the Fey is another sort of realm or dimension where a lot of the creatures like nymphs and sprites and satyrs and unicorns and all of those sorts of fairy type things come from. Leprechauns and just a whole range of things like that. And it's a very natural woodland sort of place, and so a lot of the abilities you get in the Fey bloodline are around agility, nature, summoning, and then things like sleep and laughter, strangely enough. So you actually get 2 different abilities to do with laughter, 1 to do with sleep, some summons, and entangle, so lots of stuff to do with nature and stuff like that. Some elemental resistances. So it's an interesting one, but I don't know if I would ever play it I mean, it would synergize really well with a gnomish Eldritch Scion if you're going to try that. Um, but we'll see if I ever play that. Infernal bloodlines. This is the one that's a little bit confusing to me. I haven't read the distinction in Pathfinder, because the difference between Abyssal and Infernal. Abyssal is demonic heritage. Infernal is devil heritage, and for some reason, devils are distinct and different from demons. Not sure what the distinction is. If anyone knows, put it in the comments. Um, I could look it up. I haven't had the chance to yet. This is very different to, or very similar in some ways to the demonic one, the abyssal. But most of the spells and abilities here are around fire and mental attacks, and you do get claws, but you don't over time start to convert into a devil. Instead, you get more abilities to attack the mind, or um, fire-based things, rather than specifically turning into a devil. Serpentine bloodline is, I suppose, from the D&D realm. This would be Nagas, however you pronounce, whatever you want to call them, the snake people. This just says something about the heritage from ancient reptiles, lingering strain of ancient serpent races, but there's no actual name for them or information about them. A lot of this stuff is to do with poison and mind control, stealth, and summoning. And again, you get fangs this time rather than claws. But again, I'm not sure if I would use them. The poison damage, because it affects Constitution, that's interesting. That might be an interesting mechanic. But really, if I'm in, when I'm in close melee combat, I'm going to want to use my sword, or my, whatever my melee weapon is that I'm using, so that I can channel my magic through it. Having to bite like this separately negates all of that. So I'm not sure how much I would use that Serpentine bloodline. And the last of the heritages then is the Undead bloodline. Pretty standard. A lich or a vampire or something like that in your heritage, or some sort of curse, I guess. You have ability to summon. So it's everything necromantic, basically. Summoning undead, as well as things like fear and energy draining, vampiric touch. Those sorts of things are what you get from this one. Again, no restriction. You don't have to be evil or anything like that to take this one. Not really my cup of tea, but certainly if you've got that necromancer bent and you want to try something different, definitely give it a try. It would be an interesting way to go. I'm just quickly going to pick Air Elemental just so that we can move on. Not going to talk too much more. I'm really just going to talk about ability points here. Now, as I mentioned in the other video, strength or dex builds is really up to you. The difference here is that you don't need to put anything in intelligence. You do need to put stuff into charisma, and as with the other build, you'll need at least 16 charisma to be able to cast spells at level 6. That's the only real restriction. I don't think I would actually go much higher than 16 in the charisma unless you wanted to be really good at persuasion. The disadvantage you're going to have over a normal Magus is that unless you want to put some extra points into intelligence, you're only going to have a very limited number of skill points here. The Magus normally has to have 16 here, which gives them an extra couple of points of skills, and in fact I think the Magus in general gets one extra skill point. Oh, that might have been because I was playing human before as well, not Aasimar. So you're going to, unless you want to put some points into intelligence, which I don't necessarily suggest, but you can do it if you need them. You're going to have only, say, 2 skill points that you have here. Again, there's not really any skills that I would normally take points out of. If you want to min-max, you could do it for wisdom, but you definitely, of course, can't do it with charisma in this case. So I wouldn't drop the wisdom down because that affects your save throws. You really will need, as I said before, if you're going a dex build, I'd probably go 13 in strength. I'd go 16 in dex at least. Although we can probably go higher because this is going to go back to 10. So we'll go 18 there. And in fact, because I got my 12 in Constitution, I've actually got a lot of points left that I can put things into. So I could even do that, and no, that really wouldn't do anything. I'd probably put it up there into strength. So that's not a bad build. If you wanted to, you could drop the point off dex and put some of that into int and wisdom to raise up your save throws and to give you some more skills if you needed them. And really, I don't think there's much else. Oh, I've got an extra point here. I'm going to put these 2 points somewhere before I can move on. Yeah, the rest of this is going to be pretty much the same. The only thing to be aware of is whatever heritage you do pick, whatever bloodline you do pick for your Eldritch Scion, be aware of that before you pick feats and spells, because you may end up getting some feats and spells which would potentially overlap. So do your research, look at all of the options that are appearing down here. Everything from these last 3 lines here are what are different from a normal Eldritch, from a normal Magus, and they will be these 3 will be different. Just sort of review what you're getting there, and that way you're not going to potentially take something here that you're already getting for free later on. So that's it, guys. I hope that clears up and gives you some ideas as to what you can do. I have played one of my extra characters that I started. One of my companions that I started was an Eldritch Scion, using the air elemental, and I actually quite like it. It's working very well. So give it a try, see what you think, try out some of the different heritages, and have fun with it. Any comments below about what bloodlines you like, even information about ASMRs that you like. If you've got ideas for videos that you'd like to see, please let me know in comments. If you like this video, please like and share it, and thanks. I'll see you next time, probably with another Magus Archetype build video. So see you then. Thanks. Bye.